Yes, I would like to start by thanking the amazing team at Ionic and for inviting us to speak here, and also for being such a great sponsor for our mission. And you'll understand why from my presentation. So this is not going to be a technical talk. I'm not going to go like deep on technical stuff. I want to go through kind of the journey that we took when we had to build that application to connect refugees and volunteers, and how Ionic actually made this journey possible. Because without Ionic, we probably wouldn't be able to get where we are right now. That's the first time I'm presenting at an online conference, so hopefully it will be okay for that level. And obviously, if there are any technical questions, I will be happy to answer them at the end and in the Discord channel as well. Let's start with a bit of a backstory. So I'm actually a CTO and co-founder at OneIQ. That's a full-stack intelligence observability platform, and we are focused on business, just backend software as a service type application. And just 3 months ago, building mobile applications, that would be the last thing in my mind. Yet here we are today, and I'm talking about kind of mobile applications, and specifically consumer mobile applications. And the reason for that was the war in Ukraine. That really was a catalyst. And I'm originally from Ukraine, even though I'm living in Canada now for quite some time. Still have lots of connection there. And actually, we do have some employees at OneIQ that are in Ukraine and that are impacted by that. So with all these events, we couldn't just sit and wait and kind of look at people become displaced, and they're looking for shelter, they're looking for help. So we started asking ourselves, how can we help? What can we do? And obviously, we're technology people, so we gravitate naturally towards technology to solve problems. And we wanted to leverage our experience in building software and our skills in building software to make a difference here. So that's why we started all of this. And as John says, every problem is opportunity in disguise. So for us, it was an opportunity to actually do what we do best, making great software, and use this to help people. And we started this Canadian nonprofit that's focused solely on connecting refugees to communities and volunteers around the globe. Right now, we're focusing on helping Ukrainians, but that's kind of not really the only mission. Can go beyond that. And as we looked at the situation, we approached that kind of more from a business perspective. We try to analyze actually what's going on and what's needed, because there are a lot of people impacted by the crisis, and those are vulnerable people. And we needed a solution that would actually adequately address their needs. So we started talking to them. We actually started talking to the refugees in Europe and trying to understand what situation they're in, what they're missing, what they're looking for, what can we do, right? What can we do from kind of technological perspective to help them? So before we even decided what we're going to build, first we wanted to understand where the pain points are. What we found out is that obviously safety and security is the top priority. That's absolutely something that everyone was talking about, is how to make sure that whatever solution is out there, everyone is safe on that platform. Because we heard a lot of terrible stories about people being taken advantage of, and some solutions that popped up right at the very beginning, they really dropped ball in that area. So there was a lot of information publicly posted. There was no checks for who is on those platforms. People kind of had to use them, but that all kind of led to those different not very safe situations, unfortunately. And in fact, safety goes both ways. It's not only about people seeking help, it's also about volunteers, because volunteers are reluctant to publicly advertise their help. And part of it was, once you start publishing your information online, that leads to identity theft. There are types of scam that started to appear around this. So we really had to sit down and figure out how can we make this safe. Another aspect is that the majority of those refugees are women with children, and they weren't really comfortable getting help from men. They wanted to be connected to women. So there was this gender kind of preference that has to be built into the platform, so people would be comfortable offering help and also receiving help. Then the language, people getting to different countries, not everyone speaks the same language. So how can we help alleviate those boundaries, figure out how people can communicate without within the platform without kind of relying on some external translation mechanisms. And finally, while we saw that major humanitarian organizations that were doing great job on the ground at the point of entry, those individual communities that wanted to help in different countries, they really lacked that presence. They didn't have technology resources to do that, and they wanted to help, but they didn't know how to reach the people seeking help. So there was a gap between the volunteers and refugees, and that gap needs to be filled. So this were really the drivers for why we decided to go and fill that gap and kind of build the solution. So how do we address those problems? Well, we identified right at the very beginning that we have to be mobile friendly. We have to start with a mobile first application, first and foremost, because mobiles are ubiquitous. Pretty much everyone has a mobile phone. It's very easy to kind of get connected. So that wasn't really the point of discussion. But at the same time, we need to make sure that whatever we're building is safe and secure. So there is a strong focus on ensuring that data is protected, there is privacy taken into account, and that also requires some sort of biometric and ID verification, because we want to make sure that people know who they're talking to. They do understand that the person on the other end is at least who they say they are. And we also wanted to bring in social-based authentication because we don't really want to handle other people's passwords unnecessarily. We want to make sure that people can use what they already have. And it also brings additional credibility when you talk to someone who has, say, a Facebook account or LinkedIn account. And finally, ability to auto-translate on the fly the conversation, so that to address that language barrier. So here we have this challenge. We have limited time and resources because we need a solution now. We're a small team. We don't really have many developers that we can dedicate to solving the problem. And most importantly, we have zero experience building mobile applications. We never built a mobile application before. And obviously, we used those, but we don't know how to really approach this problem. Now, what we do have is a lot of experience in building web app. Now, we realize that in order to meet all these requirements, we need to go and use third-party applications for biometrics, for chat, and for translation. So we need to integrate all these technologies together, but we really have one chance to get it right. We don't have a luxury, as say other startups, to go and experiment, because those experiments will put people's life at risk potentially. So the solutions we're looking for is something proven, something we can use and just run with. We looked at options. Obviously, the progressive web app is something we know well. That's what we develop our software with. Have presence on web. We know React. We know how to write web applications very well. But we quickly realized that it's just not going to work in this particular case because it lacks necessary security, and we cannot really integrate on the mobile platform with all the native features such as a camera and being able to do biometrics, location tracking. Some of it can be done, but it really leads to inferior user experience. So the bar we set for ourselves definitely rule out the web app. At the same time, native apps, while they can meet all these requirements, we have no idea how to build them, and we'll probably won't succeed if we'll try, because we have really limited time, and we didn't even have an idea how long will it take to build it. Yet along where to start, and we needed both Android and Apple iOS. And of course, since I'm presenting here, you probably realize that we discovered a hybrid approach where we figure out a way to use what we know, all of our experience in building web applications, and package that into kind of a native app so we can still meet those requirements we set out for ourselves and deliver in time. And that's where Yonic is coming into the picture. Like, we're really, really glad that we found the Yonic and we figure out how to kind of work with it, because without the Yonic, we wouldn't be able to deliver what we wanted to deliver. So what does the Yonic bring to the table for us? First and foremost, it's an ability to use our familiar tooling and development environments. So React tooling and components we previously wrote, we can reuse a lot of that with just minor adjustments. Of course, the deployment part into native, that part we dreaded most because we didn't really know what we're getting into. And that's where the Upflow was a truly lifesaver, because with Upflow, it all seemed so much easier to go through that path. Yes, there is still issues, but without it, we probably wouldn't be able to go and kind of deploy easily into all these app stores and Google's Play stores. Now, what we didn't realize is that there is actually more to Ionic. It's not just an SDK and the capacitor. There are also some of these additional plugins and components that they've built, specifically OusConnect and Identity Vault. Now, I know those are enterprise solutions, but really for us, they fit perfectly in what we're trying to do, because we wanted to ensure good security and good authentication flow for our users. And using OusConnect allowed us to significantly reduce the time to product. We didn't really need to go and develop all of these flows ourselves, even though we probably know how to do that. It still took a big chunk of work out of our plate. Plus, that solution is tested and supported, so we really trusted the team behind those solutions to use them for our users. Enablement team at Ionic was great. It's truly one of the best team I worked with. That was, again, part of our success is they answered the questions we had, and so far it's been a terrific experience. So what technologies we ended up using? As I already said, we're building on top of Ionic SDK with AppFlow for delivery, and OusConnect and Identity Vault we're using for authentication and identity management on the devices. For the biometrics, we partnered with Regular. And again, the great thing about all these components is that they support Ionic. So there are plugins, native plugins that we could use. For Regular, there is a native plugin for Intercom to build in-app support. We're also able to partner with Stream for chat and translation, and they had also great blog posts about how to integrate within kind of a Yonic application. So the ecosystem is there. That's kind of another reason why we love to work with Ionic, is for this vast ecosystem of solutions, and we were very quickly able to locate what we need to do. So what did we learn from this whole experience? Something what expected, like we obviously expected to work with our web app experience, and what we also found out, there are like a lot of plugins. There are plugins for almost everything, and it's great because when we try to address a specific aspect, we found a plugin. Now that's also kind of a blessing and a curse, and I'll talk about this later in the next slide. Another thing that we found are live updates, and actually this is where applications weren't a bit unexpected, because I didn't really realize the power of live updates. And when Ionic team kind of walked me through how it works, I was surprised, and I was pleasantly surprised. What I didn't realize is that when you package an application and deploy it into your phone, into your mobile device, what you're really packaging is a shell with all these plugins, but your web app is a resource, and that resource is not tied to your application from the versioning point of view. So you can update your web app in a similar way you would update your web app server side if you just running kind of a traditional server side single app application, single page application. And in my mind, this is actually a killer feature of the hybrid approach. Maybe I'm wrong, but to me, being able to kind of bypass the deployments through the store every time you want to push a change is something that's really great about the hybrid. Kind of brings me back to all the flows that we're used to in delivering server-side web apps, and something that would be very, very difficult to actually achieve with a native approach. And I didn't realize that at the time, but now I think that with like this knowledge, I wouldn't even choose native approach just because of that feature. Now, not everything was a smooth sailing. Even though the solution is great, we did run into a few issues. So one is when the too much selection is not always great. And with the plugins, I think that's the case. Like especially for us, like coming into this whole ecosystem, we saw all these different plugins and we were lost. Like, what are we using? Are we using Capacitor? Are we using Cordova? What are community plugins? Why there are so many things? Why the same solution can be solved by multiple plugins? What do we choose? Even my grocery store has less selection than there are plugins in the community here. So I think I saw some of the previous presentations where I think that new extension probably may help with this by showing the plugins that are kind of outdated and plugins that are new, but it's really something that I would like to see some kind of a guidance as to how do you choose the plugin, especially because you can solve the same problem using all these different plugins. Another aspect was the component customization. That's actually going back to what Simon just presented, is when you want to customize a component, out of the box, the experience is great. But as soon as you start doing something custom, and we wanted to have custom experience, it felt like some components are better than others. So some are hard-coded, and you kind of have to find a way around certain styles, while others have variables that you can replace. And it's not like there is a clear approach as to you do this or you do that. You have to make this decision the component by component basis. And what I would absolutely love to see is a way to bring my own style, because the components that Ionic have, they have great support for all these different transitions and behaviors, and that's what you really don't want to recreate. But I want to be able to just come in with my own style and just overlay it on top of the behaviors that are there. And even though we were able to achieve this, we sort of felt like we're fighting against the components and they're not really helping us. So that's another kind of point of tension. And finally, even though we're delivering kind of as a web application, that's what we're building, we still have to build the native app. And for me coming into this whole native ecosystem, that wasn't the pleasant experience. Installing all the Android studios and going through all the Apple setup, it was quite painful. Not that it's Ionic fault, but still something that for those who probably are not experienced in this, something they have to take into account. So it's been 10 weeks of active development on the front end, and we are almost ready to ship, going through testing. The app is actually done, and now we just kind of going through final testing, trying to make sure everything works smoothly. That's what I look like after those 10 weeks. but at least we have a product, the product that I think we otherwise wouldn't be able to achieve. So these are some of those sneak peeks on what the product looks like. You can see that we're able to bring in the identity verification and fully customized look and feel, even though we're using a lot of Ionic components under the hood. We're able to bring the chat in, make sure that the on-the-fly translation works, so people can just communicate back and forth in different languages and understand each other. So I say, yes, we were able to achieve what we wanted to achieve, and great shout out to Ionic team and the product they've built. Thank you.